Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Pensado's Place. We are coming from my office with a very special guest, but also something very special for you, which are two things. One is Immersive by Embody. You can get their plugin, which is incredible. Go to the site that you see right here. It handles spatial audio in any DAW. You can mix on any headphones. Get it because we want you to have good things. The second thing is Baby Audio. Now, I can tell you from my team, when they knew Baby Audio was involved with us, Dave and everybody else screamed. So there's something what Baby Audio does that is really incredible. And because you're the Pensado audience, use the Pensado code when you go to their site, and you get an extra discount beside their site-wide sale. So Immersive Audio and also Baby Audio, get it. Go do it, and then you'll turn into our guest. And I'm so happy to introduce you to Khris Riddick-Tynes. What's up, bro?
What up, man? Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you. The fascinating thing about your career is I think that you represent kind of what's happening in the marketplace. There was a day when you could be a specialist, right? Yeah. You do one or two things. Now you have to do a lot of things. It's better if you do a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
So let me just give you an example of all the things he does. He's going to talk about the Grammy that he just won. He's also vice president of A&R for Sony Arista. He also went to law school. Babyface was his mentor. He's got a hell of a jumper. Like, he's got a lot, he's got a lot going on.
Oh my God.
But you know what's fascinating about that is when you're being creative, sometimes you have to bifurcate your head. Like, I got to evaluate the song, not what I would do to it as a producer.
Right.
Do you find yourself in those spaces?
Yeah. I mean, you know, as an executive, it's definitely learning how to get out of your own way, because as a producer, you just want to touch everything and do everything. And, you know, and sometimes it's not about you. It's about the artist, and it's about the artist vision. It's always about the artist vision, even as a producer. I think that's something I learned pretty early on, right? Like, I am creative. I do play a little bit. I do my programming. I do all those things. But, you know, I quickly understood that I'm here as a service provider for the artist. You know, I'm here to build their picture out bigger. So I never really was like the producer who was like, nah, I got to get my stuff off or get my solo going. So I was already kind of conditioned coming up under Antonio Dixon and Face to kind of, you know, give artists what they want, you know, but just on a bigger scale.
And what Khris just did for you is gave you the key to longevity for those who want to be producers, songwriters. You're in service of literally the song and the artist. And if you get in the way of that, you may have temporary success, but you won't have long-standing. The giants all know that it's about the song and the artist and supporting that. And then it comes back to you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
It comes back to you in droves when you do it that way. Now, as an example, tell us about your Grammy win, brother.
Man, it was crazy, you know. It was for SZA's Snooze.
Huge.
Huge. One alongside my co-producers, Babyface and Leon Thomas, who I work with a lot throughout
Small
my career.
Names.
And kid, BLK, Blair, who's amazing and super talented. And it started off as just, you know, initially as a song that was meant for Babyface's album, Girls Night Out, that I co-produced with him.
Okay.
So we basically brought in, you know, all my peers, all the girls I work with. And obviously he works with as well. But on a younger scale. So like the Kehlanis, you know, obviously, you know, SZA was the first session that was meant for that.
Wow.
And out of that first day, 2 songs were born, and one of those songs ended up being Snooze.
Unreal.
And, you know, it took a little while for it to come out.
Sure.
Because, you know, trying to figure out, is it going to go on his album or her album, you know, whatever. And ultimately it landed where it needed to land and did what it did.
Again, for the audience, we're in a world where there are tools for you to put out your own music and other kinds of things. Sometimes you have to stick with a song, don't you? Is that what happened? Like, you don't know when it's going to come, but you don't give up on it too early.
You can't give up super early, because you just never know if the right group of people have heard it yet.
That's right.
You know, and there's so many people in the world and so many people that consume music. that you just never really know. There's so many case studies now, especially with streaming, where a record has been out for a year or two, and it catches wind. Yeah. And it blows up.
That's right.
And it's like it's new to somebody else.
That's right. That's right.
You know, even though it may be old to me or you or whatever.
That's right.
And there's a lot of cases of that. I mean, you even see songs like Miguel's record that, like, I think it's Sure Thing, that saw a resurgence after being out for a decade.
It's I mean, you think about the things on TikTok that all of a sudden get this life and get this virality. Way back in the day, showing my age, I spent a fair amount of time with Mick Fleetwood by accident. Literally came out of Prince's 1999 premiere. Right. And one thing led to another, and we ended up being good friends. And, you know, a year ago, a TikTok thing comes out, and here this song is viral for them again. Yeah. And, you know, he's 108. Just kidding. But Mick, I'm older than you, so don't. But I think for the audience, it means that don't give up hope. Like, you have to be reasonable. Yeah. And you have to, it's why if you don't do it, somebody should make sure that they're monitoring what's going on, informing you what's happening. You may pull the plug too early, right? And you just never know. So you're hearing it from the wise and somebody who's benefited from it greatly. The on your formative path, what was the decision for law school?
Man, you know, it was something I always wanted to do. I always kind of understood.
You're better than me. I mean, I wanted something intellectual, but law just made me nuts. But anyways.
But everything, you know, I think when you get into certain situations earlier on in your career and you sign deals that may not be as advantageous to you, but, you know, are real deals and they have consequences, some worse than others, you start to realize, like the legal field is like,
I need to know.
Yeah, these are the, like, managers are great.
Yeah, however,
you know,
as a manager, I can tell you.
Whoever signs that, you know, what's in that document is binding to you as an individual. Right. Yeah. So I always found it interesting. And it touches so many different things, right? Whether if it's real estate that I'm into, or if it's music, or if it's, you know, legal stuff, you know, just knowing your basic rights, like, it was a really cool thing. So the deal with my mom was that if I graduated college and I didn't have a hit record, then I had to go to law school. And but I ended up getting a hit record with the Ariana stuff and the first album. So it was something I kind of held off for a little bit, and I actually went later. So I went maybe 3 or 4 years after I graduated from college, which gave me a little bit more life experience and seasoning. Right. And so I went in with the purpose rather than like, I'm here because my mom's here. Right. You know, I was like, I'm here because I understand why this is going to be part of my journey.
I think that, or at least the people I admire in our space, in our field, and even outside of it, they're intellectually curious. Yeah. And it's one thing when you're intellectually curious about non-creative stuff that has a place. Yeah. But when you're intellectually curious and you're creative, magic happens. Yeah. You know, the Issa Raes of the world, or the producers and artists that we know. Yeah. And so on and so forth, the Fauntleroys. You know, there's just something that you go.
It's crazy.
I mean, when speaking of Babyface, you know, I came up at Songwriter Records with LA and Babyface. Yeah. And, you know, he wasn't even called Babyface then. He was in a group called The Deal. He was Kenny. Yeah. And our company was involved in naming him Babyface and starting the solo thing, which he was sort of reticent to do. Yeah. But I remember that the chairman of that company, his name was Dick Griffey, he had gone to see them in Ohio, signed the Deal record, came back, and he passed around a cassette of Babyface's songs and said, this will be one of the greatest songwriters ever. That was way back in the day. Boom, nailed it. But he was also a balance of that intellectual and creative thing. And when you recognize it and you can process it, something else happens. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And he's one of the most intelligent people I know, but also one of the most emotionally intelligent people I know, especially when it comes to artists. And so you see that through the songs. And in particular, the songs that he writes with or for the female artists. Oh, right? God, don't get me started. Because they touch the soul, you know. But there's, you know, I think that's a really big thing. Like, you know, there's artists and writers like Sebastian Cole or Oak Felder, who I've been working a lot with this on this this Upsolve project. And these guys, we talking about fucking quantum physics.
Absolutely. All the time. Yeah.
Down to like social emotional 100%. Learning. And then we get in and we make a great, record.
Yep.
But, you know, it's so much intellect in the artist community. That, it's just, it's why the guys that are at the top are at the top.
You make a really interesting point. Just in my own experience, people have asked me about my career, and I've had a very varied career, and manager and label chief and advisor and consultant and so forth. And I tell people all the time, the most intellectual place I've been in, a number of intellectual places, lawyers and all that stuff are part of my background, is in the creative space. It's just never asked. And then when you sit down with somebody, you go, whoa, they got gears.
Well, the thing is, for creative people, we get up and we have to create something new every day.
From nothing. That's right.
Out the air. There's no blueprint.
That's right.
There's no, lawyers have a task to do.
Yes.
Doctors have tasks to do.
Right.
Creatives have to make what it is.
And you get inspired and then you figure it out.
Exactly.
You build a plane while you're flying.
Yeah. Literally, you're building a plane while you're flying.
Literally do. People say, Herb, why are you up at 4 o'clock in the morning? I can't explain it to you.
Yeah.
Something happened, I got to follow it.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. It pays rent.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, so many artists will wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and voice note a melody that becomes a hit record. And it's something they just dreamed of.
What you're not going to get a chance to do is I'm going to take him to a studio afterwards and play a remix that was a voice note in the middle of the night. That is absolute fire. We'll do that in a minute.
Cool.
Kehlani's coming.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah. You got your hands on it?
Yeah. I just produced the first single with my boy Alex and co-written by obviously her and this guy Daniel Church, who's DC. He's super dope.
Oh, cool.
Great guy. And it's doing really well. It's
nice.
It's running up the charts. It's called After Hours.
Nice.
We interpolated a rhythm, so she's got that international feel. And, got another joint on there. But her album is sounding really good. And she's a long-term collaborator.
Yeah.
We've been working since we were kids or, teenagers. And it's been awesome, man. She's like a sister.
We want to pass her a note, if we could, to you.
Yeah.
She should do Pensado's place.
Oh yeah, I'm running by her.
Just use your influence.
We gotta hit Dave up.
David
Ali.
We'll get the whole group together. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that there's an interesting globalization going on in terms of sounds.
Yes.
And mashups of styles.
Yeah.
That is really fascinating. Do you see that from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I for me, I'm so pro-black.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But I think for a long time there was a lot of other places that were very influenced by our style.
Completely.
As African Americans. Co-opted, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And what you're starting to see now, which is really cool, is that, with Afrobeat.
Absolutely.
Like, the infusion of that into even our music here and the way that the channels in which they're embraced, right? Like a lot of these Afrobeat records are breaking through R&B channels.
Absolutely right.
And a lot of it is because a lot of the R&B records aren't singing about love no more.
100%. They're absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which is really interesting that this has kind of become the new R&B. It's the feel good. It's you can dance with your lady and sing it to her.
Yep.
The mamas and the aunties can listen to it. And it's not too crazy, but it's still sexy, but appropriate. And I think that you're starting to see a big thing with that, which I think is beautiful.
I'll tell you where else I'm seeing it and learning. I've been spending because I manage Harmony, the Afrobeat side, I get a really interesting perspective because there's a guy who lives it.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing if you cop it, it's another thing if you live it, right?
Yeah.
And from the early Ariana stuff, he can go from Blur to Oasis to whatever. Cat's crazy.
Yeah.
But he also has a perspective much like you as a businessman. And so he's been talking to me forever about the globalization and what can happen over here and doesn't have to happen over there and how it's changed and all that kind of stuff. So got that, but then I ended up being immersed in a fairly serious K-pop concern from Korea, from South Korea. And man, it is amazing how massive, and now the change. And, the K-pop was essentially a lot of it was based on 70s R&B producers, and Teddy and those guys went over and they built it on the back of that stuff.
Right.
And we're used to seeing music built on the back of our music.
Right.
But now they're owning it.
Yeah.
And there's now chances to do other stuff with it. And it is fascinating, the music that's coming out, also the opportunity that's coming out.
Yeah.
And it's really important. I think part of what we try to do as a service is have you know you have options when you think you don't have options, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of being a creative. I think the sooner you learn that as a producer, a young writer or artist, the easier your journey will be.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people try to aim for the sexy stuff. I want Beyonce. I want Rihanna.
Right.
And if they don't get that, they're dissatisfied, or
they think they failed,
or they feel they failed.
Yeah.
But there's so many new artists, and for me, in my production career, I don't think I ever really placed a record on a big artist until later in my career, as far as pitching, right? It's always been like, even with Ariana, we were working with her before it was really what it is. With Kehlani, working with her before it is what it is. A lot of us all grew up together in the industry and did what, you know, kind of and made names for ourselves by getting those wins with the new artists and breaking the new artists and working with them. And those relationships last a lifetime. Which is why, you know, me and Kehlani work to this day.
But it's also your master's program.
Yeah.
You start here, you form, you win together, you lose a little bit, you shape each other's edges, you're there to get through it.
Yeah.
You get better and better. Our version was LA, Babyface, Tony Dixon.
Right.
Like, we were all stumbling together. I mean, listen, I can tell you about the patent leather suits and shoes that LA and Face had when they were figuring out what they were doing.
Yeah.
But you could see something was special.
Yeah.
And you just stayed at it. You're like, oh, here it comes.
But even with them, like, you know, to your point, it's like the Bobby Brown thing. It
That's
was like, I remember Kenny telling me, like, you know, like, he was the guy that left New Edition.
Yep.
And they were like, okay, we're going to work with him.
Yep.
You know, what? No one knew
happens.
what it was going to be.
That's
and then those records ended up taking off. And so I think that's kind of the beauty in it, you know. But with the music industry, like you said, there's so many other opportunities. There's gaming, there's K-pop, there's Afrobeat, there's this. And it's globalized now because of the internet. So you don't have to just feel boxed in.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, there's kids in, you know, in the Czech Republic who are making dough
great
by
stuff.
just, you know,
Absolutely.
by just doing stuff online and leasing
and
beats
now
out,
you have
whatever.
tools. You have tools you can do stuff with. And part of what I want to get your perspective on is, depending on how you see it, AI is a whole other world.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have to fear it, but you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you know, I always say computers can't cry.
Right.
You know, but that doesn't mean that you don't get in front of it.
Yeah.
And so don't worry about it replacing you. Figure out how to handle it.
Yeah. You know, it's a tool like anything else.
That's
you know, I mean, you know, I think everybody kind of had the fear that with, you know, programs like Logic or Pro Tools with virtual instruments that
Pro Tools, oh my God, we're over.
We're over, you know, and there's no more tape. Oh,
right.
You know, we don't need, you know, instruments anymore. And, you know, I mean, we still need them. You know, it's just the mode has changed.
That's right.
But I think, you know, AI can be beautiful. It can be a great tool. You know, you have an artist who has to go on tour or has an emergency and they can't be there and they need backgrounds done, and you know, I can sing the backgrounds and use the AI modeling system with their permission to do their backgrounds and finish out the record, and it saves time, you know.
I know somebody who has a group and they have an AI avatar as the sixth member.
Oh, that's crazy.
That can do things that other people in the group can't do.
And look, there'll be people that buy into that.
Yeah, and people who go, what the hell?
Like, what the hell? Right. You know, I mean,
but that's the beauty of what we do. That's right. And it'll just keep improving, or it'll find its own path.
It'll find its own path. And I think that, you know, I had a really cool conversation, kind of roundtable talk with a few top writers, and we were just talking about where we think it's going to affect is probably like the space of like meditation music.
100%.
Maybe some filler music for TV and film, you know, library building. That is probably going to be
big space for it.
You know, big space for it.
Yeah.
So I think if you see anything, it'll be a dent on that. But that is such a niche market.
Yeah. Right.
That once again, you know.
Yep.
You know.
And you know, again, I think if you stay flexible, we'll see where it goes. from your chair, you have an interesting vantage point as a businessman, as a creative person, as somebody who's winning, because there's a lot of people who do that and don't necessarily win.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic about where it's going, where our business is going?
Yeah, I think music consumption is at an all-time high.
That's right.
You know, I just think that artists have to understand that artist development is important. And because there's so much competition,
great point.
You can't just think because you got one record
right.
that you figured it out.
Right.
You got to study and really be a student. And I think because it happens so fast for a lot of artists, they don't do the groundwork that we had to do or that, you know, the other peers may have had to do. And so they get a little relaxed.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that the industry is moving fast. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And they can get passed up. So I think the artists who figure out and take the time for development and understand how the ball went into the hoop and master that shot from anywhere on the court. That's right. Those will be the ones that'll be able to make it. You know, and
you can't be a master without doing the work. You can't cut the corners.
You can't cut the corners.
Well, this is what I tell people. If you want to be amongst the best, if you don't have that, that's a different thing. Now, most folks I know, including myself, I want to leave a mark. So I'm gonna outdo you. I tell people all the time, I will dunk on you. Do not get this old age twisted. Beer. I will take you to the hoop.
But you know your game.
That's right.
And you know what your special move is.
That's right.
Your combo move.
That's right. Absolutely.
And that's the thing.
Footwork.
You gotta know.
That's right.
I mean, that's why it's like, it reminds me when you go out on the court and the old heads can't run or jump, but they bust your ass in the court.
Absolutely.
Because their footwork is crazy.
You're like, what happened?
You know?
We had this debate. Listen, attorney, I'm an attorney. So we talk hoops all the time. And we were talking about how people like the Joker and so on and so forth, because of the way they come up and their footwork, it's not how high you jump, it's not how, and they'll pull you out to the perimeter, hit you with three, and you're like, how did he not jump and get the rebound over me?
Fundamentals.
And absolutely.
That's the thing with music. You gotta know your fundamentals.
Same thing.
It's the same concept.
Same
sport, same thing. You gotta know your fundamentals.
Now, speaking of sports analogy, we're gonna do a batter's box.
Okay.
See, so I know you're ready because you got hops and follow through. So answer whichever way you want. Give me your take. Major or minor?
Minor.
Favorite plug-in?
Ooh. Sausage Fattener. Yeah.
Excellent.
Crazy.
Excellent. Your style of producing would be called what?
Classic.
Classic. Yeah. Define that.
It's just to feed the soul, to make you feel something.
Music as media.
That's a tough one. Music as media.
Sidebar. I think music has become so prolific that now it takes messages and things to places where before you didn't think of it that way. Like health and wellness.
Yes.
Whatever the case may be. It's like, oh, I'm on the back of music. I'm going to introduce you to a way that can be healing, which I think empowers us as creative people. Okay, back to the game.
Innovation.
Got it. Platforms for music like gaming. Growth areas?
Yeah, extreme growth areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Advice for the young person who wants to be Khris.
Man, find mentors and study. Study the craft, study music that you might not necessarily be familiar with. Study the hits from the past, whether if it's the Beatles or Michael Jackson or James Brown, whatever it may be. Study. And that's the main thing.
And the last question, the most important one, favorite musical podcast that starts with a P?
Pensado's Place.
Oh, man, who would have known? Who would have known? That's all right. As we close up, I think it's my hope.
Yeah.
I think it's important that people and artists and young heads and old heads actually hear from people like yourself. So, what I hope, we have some educational platforms and some other reach and so on and so forth. And you got to let me bug you to be part of those things.
Of course.
Would you do that?
Yeah.
I think I can tell your audience that you want to study this. You want to understand why he's successful. He just gave you tools for longevity, for creativity, for inspiration. And that's why he's a friend of ours. Right?
Yeah, man.
Khris Riddick-Tynes.
Appreciate you, bro.
Bad boy.
My man.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.